On? Niall?
Yeah, we're ready to go live.
Thank you there. Right, excellent. So I'll kick off here. Well, welcome to the Economy and Environment ONS Committee, Thursday, 21st of November. And today's subject is green space management. I'll get on to the general bit now then, which is on your agenda, which is, as everybody was aware, what? I always say I got the wrong bit on this, so you wouldn't believe it trying to read off of here. Oh yeah, sorry, wrong script. I got 3 bits of IT here. Sorry about this. Welcome. Briefing notes for chair. It says here, welcome, apologies. May I welcome all members and officers to the hybrid meeting of the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is able to be viewed by members of the press and public today. Therefore, maybe I welcome anyone to be watching remotely. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's webcast and YouTube channels after the meeting is concluded, should anybody else wish to view it. To conform as a Council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm I have not received any notification requests to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind members to refrain from the use of the chat facility, instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please could you also keep your microphone muted when not talking so there's not any interruptions accounted, as we just encountered just now. But I also remind members, as per statutory guidance under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask you make sure that you use your cameras for the duration of the meeting, please? Moving on to the meeting, moving on to the agenda, could Niall, our Democratic Service Officer, confirm that it received any apologies?
Yeah, afternoon, Chair and members. So we've received apologies from Councillors Carl Goulden and Norma Parish.
That's the only one, so everybody else is here. Right. Section 2, declarations of interest. Agenda item 2, sorry. Could I ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any declarations of interest to declare? Starting with myself. I do not. So, is it me or Niall does this? Because normally it's Niall does this. Well, do you want to do it now?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that, Chair. So, Councillor Clarkson?
None.
Councillor Haynes?
None that I'm aware of.
Councillor Haller?
None that I'm aware.
Councillor Slade?
Nothing from me.
Councillor Williams?
No. Oh, no, not for me.
And Councillor Yole?
No, not for me either.
That's everyone, Chair.
Okay, item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of September 2024. Just remind members that these minutes relate to the update reports we received on the progress impact of accepted recommendations, progress against adopted action plans. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise, and if not, then I will take them as agreed. Anybody got anything they want to bring up? I can't see anything. Anything in the chamber there, Darren?
No, Chair.
So everybody, except that everybody is in agreement with that. Okay. Item number 4, action sheet. Could please members confirm if they have any questions, whether they are happy to note the action sheet. So any questions on the action sheet? Deafening silence. Brilliant. So I'm assuming that everybody is happy with the action sheet. Thank you. Okay, on to the meat of the matter, which is section agenda item 4, which is green space management. So it says here, The purpose of the report is to provide members with an overview of green space management progress over the last few years in relationship to public perception and our behaviour change relating to green space and the policies that link to it. May I welcome Councillor Mandy Owen, Executive Member for Environment, and the office to the meeting. Would each office, and I believe there's another executive member on here as well, because it does cross a few boundaries, would each member and other people on here please like to introduce themselves to the benefit of members and for those watching the webcast, please? So those in the chamber go first, and then those who are online go afterwards. Mandy, you can introduce yourself first of all.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Mandy Owen, Executive Member for Environment.
I've got another executive member on here as well who can introduce themselves too.
Councillor Sue Morgan, Exec Member for Waste and Sustainability.
Then I'll go officers in the chamber and then officers on here.
Daniel Morelli, Head of Public Protection and Environment.
Thanks, Dan.
Joe Lewis, Lead Finance Officer, Economy and Environment.
Steve Williams, Environment Policy and Local Nature Partnerships Manager.
Andrew Osborne, Group Leader, Environment.
Right, online? I'm assuming we've got nobody.
Louise Powell, Environment Operations Manager.
Thank you, Louise. Have we got everybody?
Yeah, that's everyone.
Lovely. Right. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Owen, who will briefly introduce the report before we head straight into questions.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't get my mic to work then. Yeah. I'm pleased to introduce this report today, which provides an overview of the Council's approach to managing green infrastructures in Torfaen, which includes parks, streets, road verges, trees, allotments, cemeteries and amenity green spaces. Members will no doubt agree that well-designed and managed green infrastructure plays an important role in supporting biodiversity and delivering health, social, economic and cultural benefits. It helps provide essential support for sustaining the current and future wellbeing needs of the public. The report contains information on the Council's strategies and policies and seeks to update the Committee on progress in meeting the relevant aims and objectives and the effectiveness of delivery arrangements. I know we were expecting someone from Bronavon, so hopefully somebody will be able to attend later on in the meeting. But as always, I welcome the chance that this session brings for members to consider existing and future opportunities, challenges and demands for the Council in respect of green space management and to offer recommendations for improvements having regard to the financial climate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Mandy. That's Councillor Owen. Right, I'm going to, we have quite a lot of questions here, and as said before, to other people, we try and get through this fairly smartish. It's a very long report. There's a lot of detail in it. If you've got supplementaries, please put them in, but keep them brief if you would, please. I think we get through this afternoon. Also, the other one about not being parochial. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you know about this report, you will get from your local area, but please do not go with a parochial if you can. A heck of a lot of stuff in this report. I'm going to start off with item number 1, which is quite long, and if officers could be careful about it, it's in 3 pieces, so if you need me to repeat it, I will do. As everyone is aware, the potential benefits of friends, groups, volunteers, etc. runs throughout the report. So members agreed to ask the following combined questions around this area. Have you explored the use of friends, groups and volunteers with other local authorities in order to gauge best practice? And then the next bullet point is, have you considered incentivizing, nice long word here, volunteering, e.g. accredited training, volunteering, accredited training of the use of time credits as done with Regional Partnership Board Citizen Panel. And the next one is, have you explored joint working with organisations such as community councils, Gwent Wildlife Trust, TVA, Blaenau Gwent and Torvine Local Nature Partnership. We combined all that lot into one. We were going quite a long time on the pre-scrutiny here. So who would like to answer that one, officers?
I'm happy to answer that, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew.
So, as members may be aware, there's a long history of this service working with volunteers, and we've always aspired to engage with people because that provides lots of opportunities, not only to help us get work done, but it also provides training and experience opportunities. You know, we've got quite a few people that we're aware of who work in other local authorities that got their training first of all through our service. More recently, we've given more focus to friends groups and other mechanisms of engaging people to manage green spaces, and we've got several examples of those. We still think there's an awful lot of potential in this area, and I think we'd be very pleased to work with members going forward in the future to increase this approach in wider areas. In terms of some of the detail, you've talked about some of the work that Steve's team's been doing with local nature reserves and other areas. So I don't know if, Steve, you wanted to mention anything about that?
Yeah, just quickly, in terms of managing local nature reserve, we've got a really good working relationship with Gwent Wildlife Trust, and we use some of their volunteers in a sort of partnership arrangement, managing some of our sites. And all this is facilitated through the Blind Gwent and Torvine Local Nature Partnership. And we always try to embrace where we get an interest from members of the public, particularly for volunteering. We always try to do our best to
I will ask one, but keep it very brief.
Councillor Clarkson's got a hand up to ask.
Regarding the point that was raised about incentivising the volunteering opportunities, and whether we could have a little bit of information of how you actually do that with any
We certainly provide training costs for people who want to volunteer with us. And some of the examples I mentioned earlier, we've had previous training programs where people have gone on to other employment after being with us. And again, something we're happy to continue exploring. And yeah, it's fine.
You all right with that, Councillor Clarkson?
I was hoping for a bit more detail, but maybe we can put that in as a recommendation.
I was going to raise the point that going through this report, which is very detailed, Andrew, thank you. You've got a lot of people doing work, litter, nature reserves, etc., etc. There's a lot of opportunity here for volunteering. Part of the question asked the partnership with community councils et al. How do you see yourselves working with them, and how does that generate resources and volunteers? I'm asking the question slightly different way here.
Yeah. Yes, working with community councils. Well, although we've we connect with all the community councils, and I know, Steve, you've got some detailed work going on with Pontypool Community Council, but I think it's fair to say that there's a lot more potential, and we would like to work better and in more detail with the community councils. Would you be happy for Steve to explain what he's been doing with Pontypool Community Council, Chair?
I think that would be very useful, and your litter campaigns, which have been brilliant.
Okay, in terms of my engagement with Pontypool Community Council, I attend the Biodiversity Committee or group, and in fairness, the Community Council in Pontypool are quite proactive around the natural environment. They They lease a site at the Vartic Community Group, Community Wood, which I know they're keen on looking to manage and enhance. They've also engaged in some other projects recently, including the Christmas tree planting project, which has gone forward recently. And of course, going back a few years, I worked with Pontypool Community Council on Wales Tree.
You're not mentioning.
Yeah, sorry, yes, if I may, Chair, just to add to this, whilst we've reflected, there's always opportunities to improve the way we work and definitely to do more with voluntary groups, the community and so forth. There's a lot of work that is already undertaken in terms of us helping to coordinate and assist sort of volunteers and groups with various activities. So, for example, litter picks and getting businesses involved and taking pride in the local sort of community to support these type of activities. We help to incentivise and encourage people to do this through positive communications, through also purchasing of equipment to help with litter picking activities. We also have a range of sort of volunteering activities for dealing with invasive species. So, you know, we've had some successful work undertaken in this area. So, a whole host of different things that are going on involving the community and sort of organisations and businesses. So, Trolleywise as well is an organisation that we work with to help deal with the issue of abandoned trolleys as well from supermarkets, and for those to be recovered because they can cause a nuisance and a blight in communities. So, you know, one of the points that I'm taking away is that we've perhaps not reflected the extent of the activity and the volunteering that does take place. As you've already acknowledged, the report is particularly lengthy, but what we can do is we can look to set out in a as concise way as possible all the different types of volunteering and community work that takes place to support the work that we do in green space management.
Thank you very much, Dan. That's brilliant. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is an opportunity for us to make a recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee, if you like, in terms of the offer that's possible for volunteer groups, because I suspect that there's been some good work, some good relationships, but perhaps there's not an awareness across the piece. So, for example, I know that some people I've been aware of have been able to access, say, first aid training or things like that. And I think it's probably just something that we could look at a more global sense. So I would suggest, Chair, we take this forward as a consideration, as a recommendation, and perhaps give notice of that at this moment.
Thank you, David. As chair of TVA, you would say that. Brilliant. I would hoped you would. Councillor Amanda Owen?
Yeah, just to make a comment as well about the good work that Ollie does within, and who's dealing with lots of schools, volunteer groups, community councils, you know, and the amount of volunteers that he's bringing in. But yeah, take on board. We should be doing a bit more communication as well. But that's a work in progress as well with officers.
Thank you. I'm going to stop this one now because I think officers have got the message on this one. David, brilliant to bring that one in. TVA and community councils. I think we've got everybody in there. Right. Question number 2, Councillor Nick Holer.
Yeah, this is about 4.2.4. We talk about the green infrastructure strategy, the biodiversity and the ecosystem resilience plan. How was the dynamic community engagement undertaken, and how are you gathering the results of this? Have you noticed an improvement in terms of public perception towards the change of behaviours around these green space managements? From my perspective, I work quite closely with one of your colleagues in the north, talking about how we look at the land and how we change it around. My biggest issue right now is the lack of signage actually saying what's going on in those areas, and I think if people knew about that, that might give a public perception. But it'd be interesting to see what you guys think.
Thanks, Councillor Horner. I absolutely agree. The more public consultation, the more engagement we can do, the better, I think. And in fairness, I know that members raise this quite regularly. So signage, information on our website, every opportunity that we should take to communicate to members of the public changes in green space management, we should take. So all I can say is we need to continue to do more, and we have made a commitment to do that, and we will always do that. And signage is really important, I think. We've got signage in some places. It's not universal. We need to step that up and make certain we've got appropriate signage without going into a phase of signage clutter, because that's another issue. So it's striking that balance, I think. So there's a number of mechanisms: on-site signage, website, talking to community groups, all those sort of standard mechanisms we should be adopting to make certain the message is shared loud and wide, really.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Horner, as well. I just wanted to add to what Steve has said there as well. We do try our best to use a range of media to try to get the message across, recognising that people will receive information in different ways and to target different groups. So the use of social media is key in conveying messages in this area. We've also done quite a number of successful videos, short clips, to try to get the message across, which we find to be an effective way of communicating with a range of individuals. So, it's fair to say that we rely on some of the traditional routes of communicating, but we're also looking at more innovative ways of communicating with members of the public, stakeholders and so on, so that we can get the message across so people understand the reason that we're making changes in the way that we manage our green spaces, and the importance of biodiversity as well. Thank you.
So, Chair, can I just come back in? The perception of the public, how do you think that's going down right now?
Okay, thank you. Right, are you finished there, Nick?
We just asked about the perception of the public and how they feel about what we're doing currently, and that was a part of the question.
All right, somebody like to answer that one?
I think it's a mixed bag, to be honest with you. There's parts of the community who support the approach, and there's others that don't support it. And it's with any change you would expect that, I think. But to bring people around, we need to communicate the value of doing this, I think, and taking a different approach. And it's an approach for future generations. And if we communicate it in those terms, then I hope that majority of people will support it. But you will always get people who don't agree with it, and that's the way it is, isn't it? But as I've said previously, and as Dan said, we've got to keep going and using a range of media to spread the message.
If I may, Councillor Horner and Chair as well, to come in on this. So,
yeah.
We have got a particular example where at first we introduced changes to the annual cut and collector approach, where that wasn't received particularly well in one area, and engaging with that community and explaining the rationale behind the approach, and making some concessions as well. We've been able to work with that community, meet with them, and get a strong degree of support now within that community. So it's probably fair to say that we tend to hear a bit of the negativity around this, and those that are supporting it perhaps not as forthcoming, but actually convening these meetings and getting the community in a room, you get a balance of views, and I think it's fair to say that many people are understanding and are accepting of our new approach as well, but we need to do more to bring others on board as well.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Slade?
Thank you, Chair. Would it help to improve the public perception if we will be able to evidence, enhancing the biodiversity. I mean, I do assume that there was a sort of baseline study done before we engaged this new strategy, and perhaps if we could prove that it was working, then we might get more people on board.
Good question, Councillor Slade. We have done a fair bit of monitoring, and we're continuing to do that. It's funded, a lot of the monitoring is funded through the Welsh Government Local Places for Nature programme. The important thing to remember, I think, with these changes is that sites will react differently to change. Some sites will come on board quite quickly. Others will take a longer time to achieve what we want to achieve. So again, it's going to be a little bit of a mixed picture. But monitoring is absolutely fundamental, because if you bring in any change, you want to demonstrate that that change is working. So we're actually doing that. We had some survey done this year, and we've had some done in the previous years as well, which says exactly what I've just said. Some sites are improving, other sites are a bit slower. So yeah, monitoring is fundamental. So we will continue to do that where we've got the resources to do it.
Okay. Any more? Are you okay with that, Alan?
Yeah. It's just that some of the complaints I get around, say, the canal, there seems to be a lack of, the biodiversity is decreasing, not increasing. People comment to me about they don't see any frogs or frog spawn or tadpoles anymore, that kind of thing. Whereas if we could prove that it is working, then I think obviously we'd get more support.
I'm sure Steve would have a reply on that one.
No, it's a fair comment. The areas we've introduced as cut and collect are primarily for pollinators. So things like frogs and other parts of biodiversity, probably you won't see a massive increase, but it's the pollinators and the wildflowers we're trying to target.
Thank you there. Right, next question. Question 3, Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Chair. And I think maybe I should declare an interest in that I actually do attend the Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen Local Nature Partnership with a different hat on. So just note that for colleagues.
Thank you, David.
My question is, how long is the Local Place for Nature programme set to run? And could you provide examples? You mentioned spend of 400,000 of new land management equipment. So it's just trying to understand what that money's being used for and how it's operating, as it were, to improve what we do.
The current round of local Places for Nature funding is a 2-year programme and is coming to an end in March. I understand that Welsh Government have made positive noises about continuing that funding. I understand fresh off the press today that they've certainly committed to revenue funding. So hopefully, funding will continue. Welsh Government have put in place a lot of policy and a lot of changes which need funding to support those changes. So I'm hopeful things will progress. In terms of how that money's been spent, it's been spent on exactly what I've just talked about with Councillor Slade in terms of monitoring. We've bought a fair amount of equipment because one of the obstacles to cut and collect was not having the right equipment. So the £400,000 that you mentioned, Councillor Williams, has largely gone on new equipment to support that process. But the project also includes tree planting, bulb planting, and working with schools on green space projects. So it's a wide range of activities all come under the banner of Local Places for Nature. But the key thing is we've purchased equipment to support the changes in green space management.
Right. Anybody else on that one? Could I ask Steve that we possibly have a celebration of that, because it sounds like you got a lot of bangs for your bucks out of that one. it would be useful to publicise that.
Yeah, I always like a celebration, Councillor Ashley.
You know that. Part of my role as sustainability champion is that, but it does seem that we could celebrate that somehow. All right, I'm not going to belay that point as I'm asking people to move on. Question 4, Councillor Linda Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at 4.2.9, where you're discussing managing grassland to support the public body's diversity duty, and that you've done surveys in summer of 2024, which has highlighted a possibility of changing the cut and collect to a date in August when the land may be drier. So the question that was raised yesterday was, from an ecology perspective, what would be the impact of moving cut and collect to August? Would it interfere in any way with the life cycle of some of our insects and pollinators? And would it have an effect on wildflower seeding?
The difficulty around managing green space for biodiversity is you have to make a decision about managing at a particular time which benefits the most biodiversity. The difficulty is you can't manage for everything, so you have to set your priorities. And in our case, it's wildflowers and pollinators. It is really difficult because with a changing climate, insects and wildflowers are extending their season. And what you don't necessarily want to do is go in and cut them down in their prime. However, you have to be really careful because managing green space for biodiversity involves cutting vegetation and taking it away. And you want to cut that vegetation when the weather is half decent. Leaving it late in the season potentially makes it difficult to collect that material. So there is a little bit of a trade-off, and we're still in a bit of an experimental phase here. So slightly changing the time we cut and collect, I think could be beneficial. But going back to Councillor Slade's point, if we introduce a change, we have to monitor it to make certain it's producing the goods.
You want to come back on that, Councillor Clarkson?
Yeah, it is a balancing act.
I was hearing you think of that.
It is a balancing act. We appreciate that, but it would need careful monitoring. These areas to be successful need to self-seed. So that's a particular sort of concern, is that we decrease wildflowers by cutting before the seed heads have had time to dry and disperse themselves. But yeah, agreed, the monitoring needs to be done in a very careful manner going forward to ensure the quality of the land.
Okay, anybody else wants to come in on this one?
Can I just add, Councillor Ashley, to what's been said? I think our experience over the last 2 years is that it's become very difficult on some of the sites to do the cut and collect later on in the season. And some of the sites, I think it's fair to say, we've had to leave the grass, which has been detrimental then to the overall objective. So the earlier we can do it, the better it is from a practical point of view, and the better it is also from a perception point of view, because if we can cut that grass sort of late August, early September, then it means the grass that's longer is on, perhaps I should explain that, the longer grass is on site for a less period of time, because during the summer members get most complaints about long grass. So of course, as we've said, it's a balance. We can't do it too early, otherwise it's defeating the whole point. But there's a sort of, an ideal spot there, I think, sometime in August and September, where we ought to be doing this rather than leaving it until after grass cutting season, providing we can make other adjustments to our scheduling to make that possible, because we've got a limited resource.
Thank you there. Do you want to come back on that again, Linda, or are you happy?
It is just the balance, isn't it? At the moment we don't know where that is. if we degrade the sort of value of the land, it's going to need some careful monitoring so that we can find that golden spot.
Right, take your point on that. Right, should we go on to the next one, which is back to Councillor David Williams again?
Thank you, Chair. This was slightly intrigued at a point at line 4 to 12, which says, should current Welsh Government proposals to increase scrutiny of public bodies become law? It was really just trying to see, well, what are the proposals? You allude to something that may come, and it's therefore sort of, well, what might come? Is it like a new ombudsman, or is this going to fall in the realm of a future gender commissioner, etc.?
Thank you. I'm trying to think what's being proposed, but it's a proposal from the Welsh Government to, it's all tied into Welsh Government's commitment to the 30 by 30 targets, which they signed up to the Convention on Biodiversity. So it's new initiatives, and it's all in consultation phase at the moment from Welsh Government around potentially additional scrutiny on how local authorities are delivering their public bodies biodiversity duty. And that could be statutory performance targets for local authorities, an environmental governance body to oversee any complaints that might be individuals and members of the public might want to make a complaint about a public body. So it's those sorts of things really, and it's all tied up with this 30 by 30 target and enhancing the way public bodies deliver on biodiversity obligations.
David, do you want to come back on this?
No, that's fine. I think it's clearly work in progress, and I have some inkling of that with another hat on.
It's interesting. This is sandwiched between two grass cutting questions. Question number 6 is Councillor Clarkson answers coming back to resources and grass cutting. Go on, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. 4.2.15, we've again talked about the cut and collect, and to actually accommodate that change, there would be a need to change the regular grass cutting schedule from 10 days to 15-day intervals to free up staff resources. So the question around that is there scope to have a more flexible approach to the use of resources on a north-south evidential basis? We all know that down in the south, my experience is you have to cut the grass a little bit more often than we do up in the north, and there's different times that we actually have to start doing that with our own gardens. So the further north you go, the sort of conditions are very different from what they are right down at the south of the ward. So could we be more sort of reactive rather than task orientated by the climates that we've actually got across Torfaen?
Are you okay to answer that, Chair?
Yes, please, if you would.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. I don't think we've actually considered seasonal differences between north and south as part of this proposal. It's certainly an interesting thing that we could look at, but I think the thinking on it has come from a recent ABSI seminar that a few colleagues of Steve's attended, and also discussions I've had with other local authorities. And I think a lot of authorities are now moving over to a monthly cycle for their regular grass cutting, rather than even a 15-day that we are suggesting here. You know, because the thinking is, the focus is less now on managing short grass and more on the biodiversity objectives. But obviously there's large areas we do have to cut and maintain short, but does that require a 10-day cut, given the limited resources we've got, when we could be better using resources in a different way?
Do you want to come back on this, Councillor Clarkson?
Yeah, just very briefly. Up in the north, probably not. In other areas, it's potential. So it's about, we could have a bit more flexibility. It could let resources be freed up without anyone actually sort of noticing much change to the service provision. But yeah, I think people don't want their bowling green sort of lawns so much anymore in public areas, so it is somewhere where resources can be used more effectively.
I will come in on this because Councillor Clarkson and myself did have quite a bit of a conversation about this, and the realisation that elevation was part of the thing was something that dawned on us, because the difference is 1,000 foot. It's quite a hell of a difference, and also you can have snow up the top and be a sunny day down the bottom. In fact, the opposite is true sometimes. The bowl of Cwmbran. Also, you've got a lot of things like huge playing fields down, or in Councillor Williams's ward down there, huge great areas of grassland down. It's the biggest one of the lot there. So different qualities down there altogether. So I can see your problem. We're attending to sports fields and stuff like that, and there's a different regime. Although Steve Williams has got his amazing Aberlwyd bird project down on that by the man as well. So there's a lot of things going on that you've got to attend to as a department, which are different one end of the borough to the other, and then on elevation. So it's good to hear that you're actually looking at this. If you want to comment more on this, I'd be interested in that one briefly.
Just to come back on that, Councillor Ashley, just to remind members that the majority of the sports pitches are leased out to other organisations, and they manage those themselves. And where we do have pitches, we're not suggesting that we're relaxing grass cutting on those pitches, because if we're maintaining a pitch for a sports facility, then obviously we need to manage that in a more intensive way. I think the reference is more to the wider public areas that are not for formal play.
I wasn't. I was just thinking the South Fields, which you do, don't you? If I remember right, that's not leased out. But then you've got verges, hedgerows. The maps that go with this are quite interesting, and what you don't do, and what you don't do. And I can see your problem on this. So no, it was referenced that rather than anything else. Anybody else? Councillor Slade, you want to come in as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that sometimes informal play areas or playing space is just as important. In some of ours, in the Oakfield estate, for example, there's a lovely piece of grass. It was the subject of a planning development, which was rejected, and we need the grass being kept short there, because kids do play there, It was just a point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Councillor Slade.
Councillor Slade, in relation to that, we've got the maps as part of the appendix in the report.
Yeah.
Those maps, what they show is existing areas that we've turned over to biodiversity management as approved by Cabinet, but then, in a different colour, areas that our consultant, our external consultant has said to us have got potential for further enhancement. So, we're not saying that all those should be converted to biodiversity areas, but they should be going forward to members as a consultation exercise over the next few months for consideration, and then decisions made after that.
Right.
Fair enough.
Thank you. I think, Garrett, you want to remind me of something now, aren't you?
No, I just want to let you know that Councillor Hawler would like to come in, please.
Councillor Hawler, you're not on this, are you? Please, Councillor Hawler, come in.
Just an observation from the point of view of living right up on top of Blaenavon. In many areas of Blaenavon, I'm sure we're 3 weeks behind on the growing scene all year round. I'm an avid gardener. I can't remember the last time I cut my grass, for example, this year. In fact, I don't think I have cut it since the summer. So there is a dramatic difference between the north of the borough and the south of the borough. And my magnolia tree comes out 3-4 weeks later in the year than a tree in Cwmbran does. So the climate difference would make a difference in your cutting of grass.
Thank you for that observation. It's very interesting when you get, as chair of allotments, when you get in allotments and hear about the vagaries of growing things in that department. But I won't go on about that. I think I've got a thing now. If you look, it says recommendations. Garrett reminds me, members, what officers with officers in attendance and able to input, Would you like to put forward any recommendations do you feel are pressing on management of grasslands, as in paragraph 4.216?
Chair, could I put a recommendation in, please?
Go on then, please.
Just to be more consistent with the signs that we put across the borough, I think right now there is an inconsistency within areas of within Torrine about signage. For example, in Blaenavon right now, I haven't seen any, but if you go down further down the valley, I'm sure we could do with some more consistency across the borough for signage to make more perception for those people that do care about the communities. Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Chair, that in view of what we've got to get through, I have got some recommendations in this section, but in view of the officer's time and our cabinet members, could I put them at the end when we regroup so that we can make sure that we get through the question and scenario, please?
Okay, no, if you feel David Williams, Councillor Williams, did you want to put something on just so you were up?
I echo Councillor Clarkson.
Okay, right. In that case, it's Councillor Clarkson again. Question number 7.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
A lot of questions at the moment.
We've jumped on now to management of scrub, hedgerows along roads and spurges. So, looking at 4.3.1, we're talking about the bird nesting season, and what was raised yesterday is we're talking about August and September, but many organisations are now acknowledging that with climate change, the breeding season is extended, is moved significantly, and they are now recommending September, the end of September, as the time to start safe cutting. So are we keeping up to date with this type of intelligence with our schedules?
Another one for Andrew, I think.
I could just say, first of all, this was coming to you because we getting a lot of member concerns and complaints during the sort of September time about overgrown hedges, and we don't start cutting of hedges until after grass cutting season because we haven't got the resources to do both at the same time. So part of the rationale for adjusting the schedules and reduce grass cutting timing was so that we could free up some resources earlier to do some hedge cutting earlier. But I'll let Steve comment on the bird breeding question, because I think that's a very important one.
Okay. Have you got any other officers want to come in on that, Steve?
Yeah, I can come in on that, Councillor Ashley.
Please.
Yeah, the bird breeding season, we generally operate, and this is our advice, particularly to the planning system, is that from the end of March to the end of July is peak bird breeding season. Now, the difficulty with this is we're in a year of a changing climate. And if you get a mild winter, some species can breed all year, which makes it really difficult for us to manage what we need to manage. But we operate on what is the peak season. Now, outside of that peak season, if there is work that needs to be done, and particularly if it needs to be done for highway safety reasons, ideally, if it's a hedgerow or whatever it might be, it should be just checked beforehand to make certain that we are compliant with legislation. I think once you get into August, I think the risks are quite low, but there are still risks there. And as long as you get somebody, an ecologist, to check it out beforehand, there isn't any reason why the hedge can't be trimmed. So it's very difficult, and I'm giving advice here in the context of changing climate. Just the same as what we've just talked about with grass cutting, same thing is happening with nesting birds and the times frogs spawn and that sort of thing. So, and to keep in pace with that, keeping the service pace with that, and keeping us compliant in terms of biodiversity duty can be very tricky. But we can only do the best we can do.
Councillor, everybody, you finished on that one, Councillor Clarkson?
It would be good to have some reassurance that people are checking before they do early season. I know blackbirds up in my area still had clutches on the go in September this year.
But that, can we have an emphasis on that one, please, Gareth? Because that's one that I welcome Steve saying, to be honest, that we need to check hedges, because that, in a domestic context, that's something I think the population need to know as well, because a lot of people worry about that. I certainly do, but you do need at times to cut hedges. Brambles are the other one that worry a lot of people. You've got brambles all over the place, domestic, and they need to be cut. And people know they shouldn't be doing it. It's, you know, there is a sanction on this, I believe, Steve. Is there an actual penalty under the Wildlife Act if you get it wrong?
All nesting birds are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act.
So if we get it wrong, are we sanctioned?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, it depends on the circumstances of the offence, if you like, but we have to adhere to the law as well as anybody else.
Chair, on this one as well, and thank you, Councillor Clarkson, for the question. It's worth saying, by way of reassurance, that our teams are well versed and well aware of the need to make sure that they carry out checks before undertaking whatever task it is that they undertake. So, for example, when they're cutting the grass and prior to strimming, there's a litter picking that takes place beforehand, and they're surveying the area to make sure that there isn't any hazards there, or there aren't any animals there which could be injured as part of the process. And the same applies with with any cutting of hedges and shrubs as well. And we get the point around the changes in nature and the different differences in seasons now as well. We do keep up to date with the information that's coming forward and the research and the science and evidence, and that will be put into practice. We wouldn't be undertaking any sort of green space maintenance negligently without considering the implications on sort of wildlife and habitats and so forth. So just by that way of reassurance, our teams regularly are kept up to date in terms of expectations for them to carry out checks, that they don't put wildlife at risk of harm, and also again around this sort of balancing act as well, as if we have to do a particular task in the interest of public safety as well, there is a degree of balancing in terms of our approach there as well. So just by way of reassurance on that particular point that you raised there, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Dan. That is very good to hear that, because the safety versus the Wildlife Act is a concern, I think, to a lot of members. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's along similar lines. I have a lot of complaints in the summer about safety regarding footways, like on the approaches to schools, which were really overgrown. It was right in the middle of the bird nesting season. I perhaps would like to make sure that these hedgerows, are cut back sufficiently to allow for a bit of growth in the summer, without having to revisit the site during, nesting season. So I think people, we need to be mindful of the possible growth that's going to take place. So we need to be cutting back more, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. That's an important point as well. It's one for us to understand what we're talking about as well when we talk about shrubs and hedgerows and so forth. And it might be that there's certain overgrowth where there isn't the risk of nesting birds within it necessarily as well. So we would have to have regards to that. So it might be we schedule certain works earlier and others a bit later to avoid the risk of causing any harm to wildlife. So, that's a really valid point there. And one thing that, as Andrew said, this is why we're bringing this forward, because we have had quite a number of concerns raised over summer months where we have a concern around safety because of encroachment of brambles and so forth onto thoroughfares and so on. So that's really why we're bringing this forward as a point of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. There, everybody content on this one? The only thing comment I would make is nobody could predict the wetness of the summer, which made everything grow so quickly. So it was warm and wet this year, which was, from a gardening point of view, was great. But it certainly wasn't from your point of view having to cut all that lot. Everybody finished on that. So we're going to question number 8, which is back to Councillor Nicola again.
I'm very aware, Chair, that we're on question 8 currently, and we've got a shed load more questions to do in the next hour.
No, I'm trying to get through. I'm trying to get through this.
We talk about in 4.3 and 4.4 about tree management and shrub hedgerows. Are we confident there's enough capacity within the tree team to manage the extensive number of trees that we have in the borough, and similarly in the terms of the external contractors that manage our scrubs and hedgerows?
Like many services in the council, we're under pressure, but we are quite confident that we're able to do the job required. We continually look in at ways to bring efficiencies and have smarter ways of working, and we've invested in new technology for the tree teams recently to be able to achieve this. So it's something that we continually will monitor, but at this moment in time, I think we are happy that we've allocated resources according to priorities in the right way across the teams, and we've recently undertaken a bit of a restructure to ensure that.
Chair, on this one, just really quickly, the importance on managing the trees is us adopting a risk-based approach. So, you know, ensuring that any matter that has a sort of safety angle, the same as the previous point, are dealt with as a priority, and there's more scope then to have a more nuanced approach to other tree management issues as well.
Thank you both for your positive reply on that. Thank you. It's very welcome.
I would distinctly like to ask a question on this, because this is something in this debate at allotments meetings, because allotments are surrounded by trees in a lot of cases. Certainly the ones that border the Avon, Lewden streams. Sorry? Thank you. That was a question that we combined with this. I will be very quick on this, by the way, as other councillors think, and the tree strategy that we did a number of years back. Are you up to date on that? That's all I'm going to ask, in case other councillors are worried.
So the first point you made, Councillor Ashley, can you remind me what you said first, Dan?
Yeah, are we up to date with the trees? I'll just say, are we up to date with the tree strategy? Because there was an awful lot in there. You have to manage, bearing in mind what was said in the tree strategy, which was a number of years back. But I suspect you're still working on it.
Yeah, it's quite correct. So it's a 10-year strategy, so what's in that strategy is still up to date. And we're working very positively with the allotment groups. I'm attending the meetings now.
You are?
And, you know, we've got a positive relationship with them, and any particular issues that arise in relation to trees or anything else, we'll work together with them and try and find a solution to.
That was mentioned in this report, and we've combined a lot in there. As I said, I'm trying to get on, because trees would probably be another scrutiny if we went on at great lengths about this one. So I'm mindful of the fact that you've answered the management aspects of this question. Great. So I think that's a good answer. Right. Question number 9. Unless anybody, it's Councillor Williams again.
Thank you very much. This was 445. You mentioned the Alloy software, which obviously was being used for sort of traffic or highways monitoring. So it was interesting, just asking, in terms of trees as well as location, you're also able to map the condition and type, so we know what trees we've got, what condition, because obviously something that's for highways, how's it adapted to trees?
Yes, certainly. It's you know, a very good piece of software. We've done a research to look at different options for software for managing trees. Something that others use, and we're in the process at the moment with consultants mapping all the tree stock in Torvine. It does provide detail of canopy cover and tree type, and it also allows us to continually update on those issues as we go along. So we take trees out, we can update, and then we plant new trees, we can update. So we should have a good, robust system for monitoring the state of our trees going forward.
Thank you very much.
David, are you okay with that, David? Right, Councillor Clarkson?
Apologies, Chair. That hand should go up after this batch of questions. I've just got one more question to ask at the end.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. All I was going to say was you've answered my previous question with that answer. Thank you, Andrew. Next question is Councillor Yole, number 10. Sorry about you had to wait that long.
That's all right, Chair. My pleasure. Afternoon, everyone. So this is question 10, and it relates to paragraph 4.4.6. So I think members agree with educating the public around policy limitations for the management of trees and would encourage signposting them to where support might be. However, following our discussion, we were concerned about the potential to modify the MCS system in order to reduce demand by making it more difficult to request work that doesn't fit with policy. Would you be able to expand on this on this suggestion in order to ease our concerns?
Sorry, Councillor Yole, are you able to repeat the question?
Yeah, bear with me. Yeah, so again, it's related to 4.4.6. Members agree with educating the public around policy limitations for the management of trees and would encourage signposting them to where support might be. However, we are concerned about the potential to modify the MCS system in order to reduce demand by making it more difficult to request work that doesn't fit with policy. Would you be able to expand on this suggestion in order to ease our concerns?
Thank you very much, Councillor Yole, for repeating that. I quite understand what you're asking now. The issue we've got is that we receive a large number of inquiries, thousands of inquiries over periods of weeks and months. And some of those inquiries in relation to trees could be about leaves falling, or shading, or light issues. And the tree strategy is quite clear in that what we will do and what we won't do in relation to requests from trees. So in many ways, the public come to us and asking us questions when the answer is always going to be no, because it doesn't fit with policy, so we can't respond positively to those. But if that information was available on the website, then it would be easier for people to understand what they can and can't ask for. And the suggestion is that we restrict the MCS system so that requests are not coming through for work that we cannot possibly deliver because it doesn't fit with policy.
Okay, that satisfies me, but it was a collective question, so I'll look towards everybody else to see if they've got any further questions on that.
Yes, I'm going to get out the chair on this one. If you face the agitated members of the public or residents who've got a tree problem, where do you get positive advice on this? Because I've had a few residents like that have got a tree up there that worries them, and we're saying, oh, we can't help them. And I've had that situation a few times. I've also had residents, under social housing, they've got the same problem, or so they need positive advice. Are they going to go and get that from the private sector or voluntary organisations? And who are they? We need to identify a positive programme through it. And it also, so is there a way in which we could do that without lumbering us, taking on work, but giving advice that can be positive? It just seems that saying no is not positive.
Yeah, quite right, Councillor Ashley. I don't think we're saying no to everything, and I think part of the information we need to put on the website is helping to educate people. But if somebody is concerned about the safety of a tree outside their property, then that's a legitimate request for the tree to be inspected so that we can check it's safe. But I think that somebody who's complaining about too many leaves falling in their garden, I wouldn't say that's a legitimate request for tree work to be done.
Chair, on this one, it's probably worth being absolutely clear. You know, the intention of this isn't necessarily to prevent people from coming forward to the council. It's a way of providing people with the information that they need in a timely way as the earliest opportunity. So it helps us to manage demand if people are aware when they go to the website or whichever route they go to trying to make an inquiry, that they know what it is that we deal with, what it is that we're not able to deal with, to help manage their expectations and to signpost them in the right direction. So as Andrew has said, you know, we will get inquiries that leaves are falling in a person's garden. You know, that is clearly not something necessarily that we can spend, you know, a significant amount of office time dealing with over things that might be higher priority, such as a dangerous tree that somebody is raising a concern about. So, you know, the intention here is to provide the information up front and at the earliest opportunity so that people are equipped with the information to do what, you know, what they may themselves need to do rather than relying on a response from the council. But there'll always be a route into the council. So sometimes some queries might not fall neatly into one camp or another. There might be multiple issues with a tree, and it's important that they're able to come through then to ask for clarification on those particular concerns. So we don't want to give the impression that this is all about preventing people from contacting us. It's about providing the best possible service to the members of the public in a timely way.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. Councillor Clarkson, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. So we've talked about signposting briefly there. So could that be something that could be sort of included within the information within the website about what the council can and cannot do? Some signposting to other organisations where they may be able to find out more information about how they can get their issues solved. A lot of issues with, it might sound like it's leaves falling into someone's garden, but it can often be overhanging boughs, which people are concerned about. So some signposting to an arboricultural sort of site or where you can get arboricultural advice might be useful for people so that they don't think that it's just the council they can approach for advice.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Clarkson. We'd be very happy to consider looking at all that, providing as much information as possible on our website. Whilst we can't recommend any external consultants, it may be possible that we can just provide information on what's out there so as people are well informed.
Thank you. That's great. Right, next question is question 11, Councillor David Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think hopefully this is a fairly brisk one. We noted a risk at 453 about funding for the Assistant Biodiversity Officer, potentially ceasing in March. Potentially, I guess you mentioned there's better news in revenues, Steve. But the second point of that was, is there scope for sharing around posts across local authorities, given that we've got a Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen Nature Partnership?
Well, our local nature partnership coordinator is already a shared post with Blaenau Gwent, Steve. Yeah. Yeah. And we also been working with Blaenau Gwent where we've had sickness in the team, such as the tree officer being sick. Then we've worked with Blaenau Gwent and had used their tree officer to assist us there. Similarly, with Public Rights of Way, we're undertaking the preparation of Rights of Way Improvement Plan, which is a statutory duty, and the officer from Blaenau Gwent is actually undertaking that for us. So we work very well. We've always worked well with officers in Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly, actually, but we're stepping this up now with Blaenau Gwent, given that we've got a single chief executive.
That's an extremely good answer. And any more from members on the... Oh, Councillor Clarkson, sorry.
Yeah, just very briefly, talking about Public Rights of Way, I know I'm aware that we've been using the office from over at Blaenau Gwent. How are we actually monitoring some of our more rural rights of way at the moment? Being up where I am, I get quite a lot of complaints that they're overgrown, but are we actually doing any monitoring now with the situation that we've got with sharing a rights of way officer? Using any volunteer groups, for instance, that type of thing?
Yes, Councillor Clarkson. It's a work in progress, this really. The Rights of Way Improvement Plan that's currently in preparation is almost like setting the baseline of where we are now at this point in time. And then within the new structure, and working with Brian Gwent as well, it'll be about taking forward a much more proactive approach to maintenance than perhaps we have had in the last couple of years. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you there. Right, I'm reminded again that recommendations, I think, will be ongoing, but I've got scrub hedgerows, management of trees, local nature reserves and public rights of way. We haven't done those as far as I know, but that's within all this. Right, I'm going to go on to question. I don't think we'll be doing our recommendations. We do. Garen, you put your hand up again.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to remind you, if you want to ignore those throughout the meeting now, and we'll deal with it all at the end, as per Councillor Clarkson's earlier suggestion.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that you flagged them up, and I'll just go on with it, I think. But I'm just reminding you, just a memoir to members, that we are looking at that. I'll go on to question 12. We are pushing this as far as I can, but it's a lot of really useful stuff coming out. It's people saying to me, get a move on. I'm trying to get a move on and get questions done at the same time. I'm well aware of this. Question 12 is back to Councillor Linda Clarkson as well.
Chair, I'm prepared to forego this question and move on to question 13, if that's okay.
Well, that's Councillor Nathan Yole. Again.
That's very kind of you, Councillor Clarkson. Right, so question 13 refers to paragraph 4.9.1. That is 13, yeah. Are the two allotment management arrangements in Torvine fit for purpose, and are we meeting our need to grow food? If not, should we explore the possibility of expanding the number of allotments? I might be ventriloquising the chair with that question, but there we go.
Well, we're always open to look at different ways of doing things. As I said earlier, I'm attending the allotment association groups at the moment. I think the concern is that there's not many young people coming forward, which is a concern for the sustainability of the approach. But like I say, if there are other models out there that work well, then we'd be happy to look at those. But at the moment, I've been establishing a much better positive working relationship with the allotment associations. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess. Some questions off the back of that, though. When you say younger people, what in your mind sort of quantifies as a younger person coming forward to get involved with the allotments? And then the second question, it's a serious one. And then the second question is actually, and forgive me because obviously I'm new onto the committee, so this is not something I've looked into in much detail before. What are there any schemes ongoing with the secondary schools, at least, to teach them about the allotments and to think about the growing food, etc., and actually start trying to mainstream this through some of the secondary education opportunities?
I'm not aware of any schemes, but they may exist. But your question about age, I think what would be nice is to know there's people coming forward to take over from the older people as they perhaps become less able.
Right. Okay. So, fine. Do we keep any? And this is just a question for information. Do we keep any information then of the age profile of the people who currently have allotments, or indeed those people on the waiting list? Stuart is shaking his head.
No, we don't keep any information. But my comments.
So a lot of it is anecdotal then about where we think about the.
Yeah, my comments are based on feedback from the associations themselves and their concerns from within, rather than my own observations.
Okay, but there's nothing we do to support the associations in having any formal or informal relationships with the schools near to their patches.
Councillor Yola, at the moment, as far as we understand, not, but I think that this is a really valid point, and one that we can perhaps link in with the Council's food strategy team, which it do engage with schools around, improving the education of where food originates from and the importance of locally sourced food and the sustainability of the food supply system and so forth. So This would be a good point to pick up with colleagues in food strategy to see how we can perhaps work better together to raise awareness as to how people can get involved with the allotments in their communities and bring the younger generation through to help with the sustainability of these committees is the point that was being made by Andrew, really, in terms of ensuring sustainability for the future. So, yeah, that's something that we'll definitely take up and look into. Thank you.
I'd agree with that, because I think that, again, this is not evidence-based, but I think it would be interesting to see, though, if there is a much greater understanding from members of the public at an earlier age going through sort of their own life cycle, that would hopefully have a knock-on effect to improve that the engagement with the allotment, with those allotment associations in England. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add, the food strategy officer is attending the next meeting of the allotment associations, and hopefully you'll be able to join us.
Can I just...
Councillor Alan Slade?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that within our primary schools, I think some, not all maybe, are involved with a Big Box Boyd project, which is all about sort of growing their own produce. I know they've all got the classes in my local school have got their own little planting boxes, and they're also involved in my ward again with the community allotment, and they go visiting there and help to plant stuff, and yeah. So we're trying to encourage. This is primary school, kids. So yeah, there is work being done at the primary ages, but I'm not sure about later on.
If I may quickly check back to Alan, then is it worth investigating how and where at a TCBC level we might want to start collecting this information, so there's a fuller picture across the various bits.
Sounds like a recommendation, Nathan.
Absolutely, yeah. Wholeheartedly agree with that.
I was about to say most of the primary schools have allotments or something similar. The problem is when you get the secondary schools, it's not on because of the pressure of exams and the pressure of getting to exams. They don't do it anymore. It's a big absence. Linda, did you want to go for it? I will wade in here because there's
I would like, actually, because there are these things going on in secondary schools. Yes. Coldbad Farm and Abersycon are actually carrying out allotment schemes. The difficulty is that summer holidays, when you've got your main harvest growing season, is when they're not there. Yeah. So that's one of the difficulties. And what we could be exploring to try and get more young people in is more community gardens. So it's more of a social activity. Allotments can be quite parochial, I think you won't mind me saying, Stuart. They're not the easiest places to break into, and there are standards amongst them. We've got empty allotment places up here, and young people are sort of interested in it, but it's a lot to take on sometimes in the expectations. So more community type gardens, if we could explore that. But again, is a recommendation on the back of what Nathan said as well.
I was about to add that you've got vacancies in the north, in the 22 allotments you've got in the north, and you've got a tremendous demand in Cwmbran. And the people that want to go on allotments in Cwmbran and South Torfaen are young people. There's an awful lot of people that got young families and that want to go. That's the data that the allotment association down there has. Anecdotally, lots and lots of young people, and the models are a bit skew-if. If you go around Bristol or you go to other places, at Cardiff, you will find there's a lot of people now got wised up to this after the pandemic. There's also community gardens, and you've also got projects like Able Radio, that one and the one that Alan's got down in his ward. There are lots of very interesting projects going on. And then there's the food project that was talked about. That's very, very proactive. My only problem with it's not permanently funded. That's going to be a problem. I would also like to see a project which they did last year, where they had the incredible edible lady and grow on community land or land that's available around. Some people, some of us are actually growing on Bronavon and various other bits of public land. So there's lots of things you can do, but they need groups like the park groups that we've got round here who do that incredible edible style thing. So there's lots of innovative things you can pitch from elsewhere. I mean, Cardiff, they've got a community market growing group where people go off and do market gardening. So the food project is absolutely essential to this, and a lot of things that community councils would probably be very interested in. So lots and lots of innovation, and I think, Andrew, your department is very open to this. I'll leave it there. But if you want a list, I can provide you with one. And every community council in Wales has probably got some bit of project like this they've been looking at One Voice Wales conference. So it's not a lack of models around the place. It's just where we get the resources to do it and who does it. Does anybody want to answer that, Andrew?
Just to respond, Councillor, to say yes, we are open to working more like this with different community groups in many ways. So, yeah.
And I'd also suggest if you have a look at Grow Organic, RHS and all those sort of organisations, they've got some lovely examples on them. Okay, I'm not going to belay the point at the moment, so I'm very enthusiastic about stuff like that. Okay, next question. Thank you for that, Nathan. You did well there. It is, where am I? It was question number, have I got it right? Where am I? Question number 11.
Question 14, Chair.
I was about to say question 14. When I start going, I get out of order. Question 14, who is Councillor Haller. There you are, Nick.
Hello. This is about Cycleways 4.11. Being an avid cyclist, there are some fantastic cycle paths within our borough and further away that I use on quite a regular basis now. My question is, how often do you check cycleways regarding the drainage in the ditches, retaining walls and services, and what level of information do you receive from the public? And is there scope to involve organisations such as Sunstrands more in terms of voluntary wardens inspecting the cycleways?
I think it's a bit of a mix there, Councillor, between work that our highways team would do, work that our rights of way warden would do. And I think it's useful to know that we're currently looking at all our assets at the moment to get more clarity on who's responsible for what across the various parts of the department.
I think because of the idea that we want more active travel, then these highways, or roads as we want to call them, are really important to the future generations of our communities. Thank you. I go on to question 15, Chair. Quite poignant because this is something that we've discussed over many months since I've been a member. It's related to 4.121. Have you noticed an improvement during the past 12 months in terms of complaints received around grass cutting and cemeteries? And also, what is the system updates? And David's going to tell me the word, because I can't pronounce it.
Wynkelin.
Wynkelin, thank you. That have improved the communications with officers. From my perspective, I've seen a dramatic change because I haven't seen that many people talking to me about the cemeteries. In my eyes, there has been a vast improvement. Thank you, guys, because that's been really good. However, how do you feel about what's happened in the last 12 months?
Thank you very much, Councillor Haller. Members will be aware that there were difficulties in service, a year or so ago, and there's a number of reasons for that, due to sickness and resignation of some key officers. I think cemeteries suffered as a result of some of that, but working with yourselves as members and through information we've gathered from the public through our public consultation, then we identified a range of cemetery improvements that were brought to the committee last year for scrutiny, and it's great to hear that feedback, Councillor, that things are improved. We've certainly seen a lot less complaints, it's good to keep that, get that feedback, and we're committed to maintaining the progress.
Thank you there. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Hawley?
No, apart from thank you, because 12 months ago we were in a mayor. There is no other word apart from the mayor, and I think the hard conversations that we had collectively around the table for several months has made the differences that we see now, and hats off to you guys. Thank you.
Right, question number 16, which is a quite a crucial question. Councillor Yowell again.
It is, right, so thank you, Chair. This one relates to paragraph 4.13.1. Will the external consultancy firm have completed their survey regarding Japanese knotweed before the SPF funding ceases in 2025? And how will this work be associated, and how will this work or associated follow-up work be funded post the withdrawal of that funding?
Thank you, Councillor. So the contract will certainly be completed. The contract will be completed by the end of this month for the mapping of Japanese knotweed. It's good to see that through the work that's being done, they are able to evidence that there's a 70% reduction in knotweed since 2010 as a result of the treatment work that's been going on through the service. Once we've got the mapping in place, that gives us a good baseline then from which to use when we are doing our annual spraying in the autumn each year. We can then monitor much better the progress of eradication.
So essentially, that sounds really encouraging. So essentially the answer is then the ongoing work will basically be determined by the outcome of the current study, and we'll just internalise that with the ongoing work. Yep.
That's correct, Councillor. Yeah.
Amazing. Nothing more from me then, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you there. Right, next one is question number 17, and Councillor Alan Slade. You've got sight of that, Alan?
Yeah, you just a bit of blindsided me there. Could the representative from Bronavon please explain the variety of services provided on Bronavon land in order to clarify the roles of Bronavon, TCPC, Monmouthshire County Council and any other partners?
We've got a Bronavon representative.
Yeah,
thank you, Councillor Slade. We were hoping for a representative of Bronavon to join us today, but unfortunately they've had to send their apologies at short notice, so it's not a question that we can answer on their behalf, but one that we could follow up with Bronavon on.
Right, thank you. Sorry about that, Alan.
No problem.
I wasn't aware that we hadn't had that representative.
No problem.
Stuart, sorry, can I just come back in on that one? I know they're not here. I'm in the middle of arranging seminars as well for Bronavon to come and talk to us about the green spaces as well. So if it's not relating to a recommendation, then you could sort of ask those questions at a seminar in the new year. And I'm going to have to give my apologies. I've just had a phone call. I have to pop to my mum's. She's not very well, so I'm really sorry for leaving you, but I hope the rest of the meeting goes well and look forward to your recommendations.
Thank you very much. So we make sure Bronavon gets that. Is that right, Amanda?
Chair?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, I'm going to have to go, so sorry. Bye.
Just go, Mans.
Chair, just wondering, obviously, we've got, I think it's 3 or 4 Bronavon related questions. I don't know whether you want to leave those for now, and then I'll forward those on to Bronavon and then feed back to members with their responses.
In the circumstances, that's number 18 is a Bronavon question, and so is number 19 and 1920.
So questions 17 to 20, if you like, we can play it that way if that's easiest.
Yes, that would be. They can go. Mandy's also on the board of Bronavon, so that's why she can feed in.
Okay.
Right, thank you there. Right, so we're going to number 21, which is Councillor Yeo again. You've got this one there, Nathan.
I do. Questions like buses this afternoon. Right, so this is in relation to 4.15.1. So with regards to the council's insurance policy not covering vandalism in play areas, Have we explored the possibility of using friends groups who may be able to access a variety of other funding mechanisms like lottery funding to help pay for the upkeep and to presumably tidy up any vandalism that happens?
Thank you, Councillor Ewell. It's a difficult one. I'm not sure that play areas would be seen as a priority for HLF. I don't think I've seen it in the previous programmes. It's a difficult one with vandalism because it's not actually budgeted for, so it catches us unaware, and then we have to find money wherever we can, unless it's extremely expensive, and then we have to wait then until these opportunities come along. So I'm not sure if I've really got the answer to your question.
That's fine.
Sorry, Councillor. It's probably fair to say that we do sort of explore every opportunity for funding to support us with the sort of maintenance and upkeep of parks and play areas and so on. So we've had a few successful projects recently using SPF funding as an example, but any other funding streams which become available which we can use to make improvements or create new facilities, we constantly are looking to seek those opportunities. In terms of working with voluntary groups and so on, and if the opportunity arises where there is a group within an area that is interested in a new installation or raising funding through whatever means to improve facilities, then again we would also look for those opportunities and to work with them.
Okay, thank you. Just a factual question, if I may, Chair. Just and excuse my ignorance. Is there an issue though that in those, let's for argument's sake, let's say there's been vandalism in a park or a play area that has a Friends of group operating? Are there issues with the liability that would prohibit the volunteers in those Friends groups from trying to correct or overcorrect the vandalism themselves, or is it something that we would encourage them to do? Is it the former?
Yeah, I think the key here is because obviously in terms of the sort of repair aspect, what we wouldn't want to be doing in any sort of eventuality is just constantly repairing from recurring vandalism all the time, and I think that there's a need to try to identify the cause of the problem. So working with a range of stakeholders, including community groups, to help identify the issues and put preventative measures in place to deal with those. So working with community safety as an example, working with local policing, working with residents as to how they might be able to flag with us where this type of vandalism may be occurring. We're not aware of any sort of or at least I'm not aware of any group that is looking to sort of invest in making those repairs following incidents of vandalism, and they're sort of prevented from doing so because of particular sort of barriers in terms of insurance liabilities and so on. I think in terms of our insurance, what is often the case is that the premium, not the premium, the initial amount that you have to pay, I can't think of the term, but the excess, sorry, the excess that you have to pay is often far, far greater than the cost of repair in the first instance anyway, so that's one of the barriers for us as a local authority in terms of using insurance to deal with these issues.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Councillor de Clarkson. And then
yeah, I'll be very brief. This could be an opportunity for exploring some partnership working. I know community councils have some funding they put aside for accessible play equipment. Bronavon similarly, and other housing associations, Melin, for example. And when it comes to accessible play equipment, that might be something that groups may be able to get involved with on a fundraising basis. But yeah, on the sort of level of vandalism, it is a community's approach that we need to do. We get a lot of that problem up here, but an opportunity to explore partnership work, and I'm thinking.
Thanks, Councillor Clarkson. Just to bring Joe Lewis, our lead finance officer, in on this as well, because obviously there are different funding streams that we get to make these sort of improvements. Joe is well cited on, so I'll hand across to Joe.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we do explore those opportunities. Officers within Andrew's team and Dan's team, in fact, have just recently secured funding for a new type of swing that's going in one of the parks that's partly shared prosperity funded, partly community council funded. I believe it's Pontypool Community Council that's funding that. But that is something that's happened a number of times over the years, as you've said. So wherever that opportunity comes up and the Community Council are keen, I think it happened in Newen Park about 5 years ago. So there's quite a lot of examples of that happening, and I think officers would always continue to explore that and utilise that as either part of a single installation to add value to an existing park, or as part of a refurbishment that we were looking to fund either through our own capital programme, through Section 106 funding, if there was eligible funding in that area, and in any other means of external funding as well.
I was about to add that there's quite a lot of this going on in Cwmbran at the moment, where we've had the Community Council in the past has funded playgrounds. The Podnewid Park has had a roundabout put in. I will declare interest there because I'm a member of the park group as well, and so is other people. Councillor Morgan. So there's been a lot of activity going on in Cwmbran parks. I believe there was a massive, great lot of park equipment put in Cwmbran Park as well. So it's by Friends Group as well. So it's not without precedent if you look around, and partnership working is important, because you're looking at the conversation I think we had with Louise the other day. The actual expense of a piece of Wickes park furniture is not necessarily vandalism, it could be age, because some of this equipment costs an absolute fortune for your department to grow. So getting partners in it is very, very important. Simple little bits of equipment like rocker, I believe, cost about £5,000 or so. So it's awful lot of money. And Section 106 money is also important when we can get it. So it's a lot of partnership going on there. I'm pretty certain you're well aware of it, but it's really good that community groups work in partnership with the council and the community councils. Anybody want to comment on that? Or have we commented enough on it? Dan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we accept the comments that you've made in terms of exploring the funding opportunities that exist with Section 106 and all the other examples that you provided. So agree to that.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just seen it recently. That's why I was making a comment. Right. So next item on the agenda is question. Where am I on here now? Sorry about this. I'm struggling slightly with my computer.
Question 22, Chair.
22, that's it. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Horler. Just wanting somebody to tell me to do this. Yeah. Councillor Nick Horler, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm there. We're just waiting. So you're all aware that I have a passion for off-roading, and I sit on the PCC. Next month, I should be asking the PCC the same question as I'm going to be asking you. I'm fully aware that we've had conversations previous to this. So my question is, how important is legal off-roading to TBC, bearing in mind the funders' uncertainties post-March? And what contingency plans have we had? And I do have a supplementary following this question. Thank you.
Well, members would be aware that, I've spent all of my career in Torvine with this, trying to deal with this problem. And, I've had various schemes working with the police. The difficulty with the police is that, you can have a very good officer, and within a short space of time, they move on to something else, and then you haven't got the continuity, a new one comes in, and the scheme doesn't quite go as we'd originally planned. And I think that's what our difficulty is with the current programme. I think they've delivered a lot of good stuff, but we haven't necessarily had all the detail of what's actually been delivered. And we need that to evidence the benefit of the scheme, especially if we're looking for future funding. At this moment in time, we don't know the future of SPF funding, but you could be assured that we will always look for opportunities to be able to sustain the work we're doing to combat illegal off-roading.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think on this one, it's just recognising that this needs a collaborative approach, doesn't it, with a range of organisations, and recognising that the issues of off-road biking don't stop at the border. So we need to work with neighbouring authorities and a range of stakeholders to tackle this issue. But we are seeing some successes in terms of some vehicles being seized and dealt with in that way. And there are a range of technologies being put into use to help combat this issue, which is a blight on, on the landscape, such as the use of drones, as well as, the work that the police do in terms of surveying an area. So thank you for that question. It's something that we'll be following up on.
So my supplementary is, again, about a problem that we have in the north of the borough. Fully aware that we live in a valley full of sheep. However, whilst I understand that we don't have any remit on being able to go to that farmer, to be able to talk to that farmer, to be able to resolve the issue that when we get stray sheep into our community, that will and has had instances of deaths of sheep within the community and cause accidents. I'm fully aware that we have that situation, and I'm fully aware of how far we can go with Torvine currently within the legal aspect of where we are. Could it be said that we need a better engagement with the commoners to see if we can push them to be able to resolve this issue? Is there any way that we can help the commoners move to these people that are causing the problem so we don't have that issue with sheep? I know that's a hard question to ask, but I think we need to be engaging better with the commoners to be able to improve the basis of where we're going to see if we can resolve the issues that we currently face in the north of the borough. Thank you.
Yes, we've again got a long history of engagement with the commoners. We've set up various schemes and secured quite a bit of funding to help them over the years. But I think this issue of sheep trespass that you referred to, Councillor, is a matter of liability and legality, really. And, whilst we would like to do all we can, and we are doing all we can to assist with the problem, I refer perhaps to Dan with his, environmental protection hat on. I think we are constrained, really, constrained by.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Haller, and we do acknowledge how strongly you feel in this particular area, and the issues that you've flagged with us as well in terms of public safety and so forth. This isn't necessarily sort of an issue in terms of us not effectively engaging with the commoners. I think we engage fairly well with the commoners. It's a question of sort of, as Andrew said, the legalities and the practical solutions to deal with this, and where we don't have an ability to require a landowner to fence off their land to prevent sheep from trespassing, it makes it very, very difficult where we're relying on goodwill, where people will have to go to some expense to help with a solution. So we're keen to explore all possible options with commoners and other stakeholders to help tackle this issue. But it's fair to say that our hands are tied somewhat, really, from a legal perspective.
Thank you, Dan. I do appreciate your comments. It's most welcome. Thank you.
Right, thank you there. So, question 23, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on now to member engagement. We're talking in the report about there used to be regular meetings, area-based member engagement groups, which met quarterly intervals to discuss concerns in specific areas around environment, waste, highways and civil enforcement actions. These meetings have not taken place since 2022, following discussions about them being led and chaired at a more senior level. So the question is, how was the decision taken for area-based member engagement groups meetings to cease in 2022 and instead be led and chaired by more senior level of management? How are these meetings working, and is this merit in returning to the previous arrangements with members meeting quarterly?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. I think it's fair to say the value of these meetings is acknowledged, and it is something that has been raised at the members' working group that the Chief Executive has established, and the current Acting Director for Environment and Economy has committed to take this forward as well and re-establish those meetings going forward. So we hope to have an update for members in due course on that.
Thank you. That's a very succinct answer. Thank
That's
you very
good
much.
news. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Question 24, Councillor Alan Slade. You got a side to that, Alan?
Bear with me a little bit. Thank you. Could you please explain the reasons behind the missed performance targets that are causing the most concern and what can be done to bring about improvement? Sorry, it relates to paragraph 4.19.
Sorry, Councillor Slade, I didn't quite catch the question. My hearing isn't what it used to be.
Neither is mine, but I'll try again. Bear with me, sorry. I've lost my questions. Sorry about this.
You want it repeated, Alan?
Do you want me to repeat it for you, Councillor Slade?
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Get Grant to repeat it.
Okay, thanks. Could you please explain the reasons behind the missed targets that are causing the most concern and what can be done to improve?
Okay. Well, we always endeavour to deliver on our targets. I wouldn't say, the targets of most concern would be the ones that present the greatest danger to the public, I suppose. But where there are issues, we're continually looking at ways we can deal with those issues. What do you want to say, Dan?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Slade. We do acknowledge that in some areas our responsiveness has not been what we would like it to be, and we have not met target on certain occasions. I think what's noticeable from the table in the report is the response rate to inquiries relating to access and recreation. And some of the shortfall here is primarily related to the absence of staff in the team as well. So we've got a number of vacancies that exist within the service area at the moment. They've arisen due to either people leaving posts or because of sickness and other reasons. The way of resolving those is to get back to full complement. Just to give members assurance, what we always do is try to have a triage approach to dealing with inquiries so that we deal with those of high priority first, where there may be a risk associated with them. And one of the improvements that we recognise that we need to make is around managing expectations, so that if we are, for whatever reason, not able to meet our service response times, we are keeping people updated on why that is the case and when we expect to get around to dealing with those particular inquiries. So we do acknowledge there is staffing pressures in some instances. There has also been issues around systems, so in terms of how the information is coming through to us, and whether that is in a timely way or whether it's been to other areas and not being routed to us directly is some of the challenge sometimes. So we are constantly looking at our systems, our processes, with a view to making continuous improvements on how we deal with inquiries. And we've recently, just within the last week, made some changes in terms of our monitoring so that we can have a more effective approach to escalating where we're likely to not meet the target on certain issues, so that we can update members, as an example, to help manage the expectation and keep the communication going. So, we do acknowledge the issue. I think, just to have a bit of balance as well, in some areas we're particularly sort of responsive, and you'll see for litter and fly tipping 100% there. And, we've got 95, 80-odd% in other areas as well. So I think, as an overall, the picture is fairly positive. But What we would like to be able to report is 100% across the board at some point. So thank you for your question, and just to assure you that we are continually looking to make improvements in this area.
Yeah, thanks for your comprehensive answer.
Thank you there, that's great. So question number 25 is Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. This is slightly complicated issue. It's regarding paragraphs 420.1 and 420.2, and it's looking at the local environmental audit and management systems and litter and environment quality monitoring. So there's some issues stated in the report about Welsh Government not funding these at the moment, and other areas that you're looking at expanding the quality of these assessments. And the council has undertaken inspections this financial year in line with the guidance. However, again, we've got some resource issues. So what the question is that we came up with is, how are we currently monitoring street cleanliness in Torfaen, and how will we meet these new regulations? Are we confident going forward in terms of potential resource and capacity issues?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clarkson. On that, when we've reinstated our approach to assessing the quality and cleanliness of areas through the introduction of these surveys, so they're currently being carried out as of September. They recommenced by the charge hands for the area teams, and they're being undertaken. Well, I should say the charge hands are carrying them out in another area other than that area for which they're responsible. So there's, there's a bit of a degree of objectivity hopefully brought into that. What we're hoping to do is to deliver some training for our charge hands, so we have some confidence around the consistency of the application of those surveys, our understanding is that Keep Wales Tidy are also looking at a new mechanism in which to be able to assess the cleanliness of streets as well. So as soon as that becomes available, we would look to adopt that at the right time. But I think this is probably the best measure that we've got at the moment, even though there's a degree of subjectivity involved in the surveys. Just to give you assurance, we are adopting the surveys as a tool for monitoring street cleanliness, and that will be used as a way of targeting areas. Then, that might be where there's noticeable problems, I suppose.
Could I just come back with a supplementary on that, please, Chair? It seems to me that some of our volunteer groups could help out with some of this information as well.
Yeah.
Where we've got litter picking groups in place. They're very well aware of our grot spots and where they spend most of their time and attention. So it could be that we could have some conversations with our local volunteer litter pickers on these as well.
Absolutely, that's a really good point, and it's one that we've been discussing about how we might use volunteers to carry out the surveys and give us an indication of the cleanliness from their perspective as well. So that would be a really useful way forward. Thank you.
They may be more objective.
Does the litter officer take data up on this, because it does seem a good use of him? Did you get that, Dan?
Sorry, Chair, I missed that.
Yeah, does our litter officer, who's very proficient, does he work with them on stuff like that?
He's not currently involved in the LEAM surveys, but I think he'll have a key role to play if we're going to use the sort of volunteers and community groups to assist us in taking this forward. So, yeah, absolutely, it's one that we will pick up with him.
Councillor David Williams, I presume you want to come on this as well?
It was just a very small observation, Chair. Two things. One is that I know work has been done. It's a different area altogether, but work was done, I know, in the housing field about looking at sort of clutter survey, so that you actually had a kind of clutter register of sort of understanding level of clutter. And I was involved in some discussions with the Housing Association about looking at a similar kind of mechanism for outdoor space. So there may be some opportunities to draw on sort of things that have been done in other areas. It's simply an observation, nothing more.
That's a very good point. Anybody want to come back on that?
No, Chair, just noted. Thank you.
That's a good point, isn't it? I think. Right, 26 is you, David. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I think this is, I probably don't need to ask this because I think we've talked about the system and I think that's being picked up in other areas. So if I could go on to number 27, Chair.
Which is you again, yes, please do.
Yep, just noting there was...
Chopping through this at the moment.
We were noting, I think it's at 421 or just below there with the charts. There seems to be a significant increase in number of complaints from 21, 22 to 22, 23 and then to 23, 24 with a subsequent drop also in compliments. So are there any particular themes to this and how you might be addressing them? I know you've touched a little bit on staffing issues and full complement, etc. in one of your previous answers, but it's really just giving the opportunity to perhaps explain this a little more so that we have a better understanding of how they're being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's difficult to assess why there's changes there, but it could be seasonal, because obviously, you know, if we're cutting grass in the summer, then there may be, and there's hedge growth in the summer, then you're more likely to have issues around from that. Whereas in the winter, those activities are going on to, well, not going on at all really for grass cutting, and hedges wouldn't be for a lot of the winter time. So that's probably how the complaints are coming forward on it, you know, differences in quarters.
Any more on that? David? Okay, right. Then we're up 27. You've done that already, haven't you? You caught me out here. It's 28. Councillor Clarkson, you've got the final question. You caught up with that?
Yeah, it's sticky buttons. Sorry, Chair. Right, we're going on to the reducing demands and complaints and 4.22.1 and following actions are proposed to reduce demand on the services but enable officers to respond better to member of the public inquiries. And some of those are very sensible. We strongly agreed with the information on council websites. We've already discussed the changes to the MCC. Very much agreed with the frequently asked questions page. What we haven't discussed is create and publish parameters for the removal of dead animals. And members note that there not always be a legal duty to remove dead animals. However, it could be argued that there is a moral and/or environmental duty. Could you please expand on the action to create and publish parameters for the removal of dead animals in order to ease some of the members' concerns, please?
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. I think where this is coming from is I've become aware that our operatives get many requests for removal of dead animals. Now, if there's a sort of a larger animal, say a cat or a dog or a fox, then I can see good reason why those would need to be removed as a matter of urgency. But we get quite a lot of people asking for removal of dead birds and other very small animals. And I question whether it's good use of our resources to be regularly picking up those which would otherwise be picked up by other animals and be part of the ecosystem that we live in. It's just the way of life. So, I'm just, it's just a suggestion that perhaps we ought to look at that to reduce demand on the service.
May I just come back on that, please, Chair? Yeah, totally agree about the food chain. We regularly see smaller mammals, hedgehogs, birds being taken by larger mammals as part of the food chain. Again, could this be something where information could be within the website to educate people how to deal with these smaller issues, how to dispose of a dead mouse or a bird you might find in the garden, information about safe handling, because that's part of it. We hear about avian flu, and people are then scared to actually and deal with some of these animals. Again, it could be signposting to wildlife organisations where more information could be, so that we're not being specific, but we are giving people the opportunity to be educated and well informed about when we need to intervene and when we don't need to intervene. I also see now is that there's a lot of volunteers that actually respond to the road deaths of cats, and very, very, very quickly with dogs. So if it is a concern with smaller mammals, maybe we can add an educational impact, part within the website to educate people on how to deal with these safely and satisfactorily.
Thank you there.
Chair, could I come in on this one, please? I appreciate it. It's just 6 o'clock.
No, there's somebody in front of you.
Sorry.
Councillor Yeo.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's just a question for information, basically. Where do we stand on rats and sort of potential pestilential mammals? Because I don't know about anybody else, but the number of rats I've seen on the canal in the last 18 months has seemingly gone through the roof.
That was a question I was going to not ask, but make an observation. I think it's one thing about cats, dogs, etc., and nice, friendly animals, but rats, mice, and animals that people regard as filthy pests.
Are you talking about extermination now, or dealing with dead animals?
No, dealing with dead versions of. They leave them lying there.
Not mice so much, Stuart, because I can imagine they might disappear through the food chain. But actually, if there are rats in evidence,
rats frighten people.
I think that's a fair question, Councillor. And the suggestion here, I suppose, is to draft something for then members could comment on.
I think we've got a recommendation here, Andrew. You've worked us towards it, haven't you? I think you're good at that.
Already written down, Chair.
Thank you, Linda. Right. Anybody for? We're on 28, so we've ended. Now I got.
Chair, sorry, could I come in on this one, please?
Yeah, yes, please. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to do that to you.
Thank you.
Please, you can have the end remark, by the look of it.
The end remark is I want to tell you a little story. It talks about a resident several months ago, who made contact with me, who said he had a poorly sheep in his garden, and it was very poorly. And by lunchtime, that poorly sheep had died.
Oh, no.
The issue that I had relating to find the owner or find somebody to remove that sheep was a task and a half that I could eventually, at 9 o'clock at night, I actually found a farmer who it belonged to, and that farmer took that sheep away in the morning. I went to see the sheep and I covered it up because of obviously the smell and everything else. It wasn't a very pleasant sight. My question to you guys is there a way that we could have a directory so we could contact these people that we need to talk to about the sheep that we have that are dying in the streets? Because right now, it took up half of my day just finding somebody to deal with the sheep. And Torvine were happy to deal with it, but it was late in the day and it was really difficult to deal with. And meanwhile, we had a resident in my community that had a sheep under a lounge window, wasn't smelling very pleasant, that needed to be removed. And the hassle to try to get that sheep removed was really difficult. We need some form of a better communication between ourselves, Torvine, and other people to be able to solve those issues. And we do get this on a regular basis. It's really difficult to control, and when it does, I think, oh, help, what am I going to do?
Right, serious question there, guys. Who's going to answer? Dan.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Haller. And we understand the sort of stresses that a situation like that can cause and the need to deal with it urgently. The way that we currently deal with issues around roaming livestock, or if there were to be an animal which were to be found dead on private land, is a member of the public or a councillor could make contact with us, and we do hold a database of different farmers. It's not 100% in terms of having every small holding on there, but we We have information for different farms for our regulatory purposes around animal health and welfare checks or animal feed checks. So we can directly make contact if you are aware who that animal belongs to request that they collect it and dispose of it appropriately. So there is that mechanism in place. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to identify the owner, or even if you think you may know who owns it, for that person to take responsibility for it. And unfortunately, where these animals are present on private land, you know, the council is also limited in terms of what it is able to do, because you know, we can't enter public land to look to remove it, private land rather, to look to remove an animal. And you know, if we were to provide that service, you know, it would be very difficult to work out what might be a genuine issue and what might be somebody trying to get the council to you know, meet the costs of animal disposal. And there's a lot of considerations around animal disposal as well, particularly livestock as well, in terms of animal byproducts and so on. Thank you.
So to clarify, if it's on private land, it's very difficult to deal with because of the nature of what it was. This sheep actually wasn't marked. It came off the common. There's a lot of sheep on the common that don't mark. It was very difficult to recognise that. But also on public land that we have within our towns, that this happens. It's still trying to get that resolve of getting that sheep or that animal removed, and how we do that, and a better way of moving that forward. And perhaps we could put this in as a recommendation.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
Nick, I'm mindful that I've got to conclude this. Thank you very much. That's a good contribution. Dan, as you're the senior person here, Mandy's gone. I'm not asking Sue to say anything because it's not a brief. Could you conclude, if you would, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to say, we're really grateful for the opportunity and the insight that you've brought to this session as well. We've got a lot to take away to think about. And as always, we found the session, I think I can speak on behalf of my colleagues as well, really, really useful in terms of thinking about ways in which we can make improvements. So thank you, and we look forward to your recommendations and to responding to those with the executive member. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the executive member and yourselves, all of you, those that said something and those that sat there and nodded. You've obviously digested it. I'm looking at Louise and people like that. And thank you, Sue, for attending. I got some idea what we've done with this one. It's probably not your brief, but there are elements that certainly are. And thank you very much. I'm not going to ask you staying home, get recommendations, because I think we've got enough in this with the people we've got involved on this that we can get recommendations out. We've got some good scrutiny members here and get this out fairly quickly, because I don't think they want to hang around too long. You are free to go. Thank you very much for your contributions, and I'm pretty certain we'll give you some reasonable recommendations to play with. Thank you very much for your contributions. And you bit better, we're still on air, as it says here. Ryan, you're still in the meeting, and we still need to get our recommendations out. And I will then, when everybody's gone, I will then go through this bit. And I think we're okay on this. Are you all right there, Geraint?
Yes, thanks, Chair. If you can just give us a sec, we're just waiting for the...
Give me the heads up when everybody's out. Thought they got out there quickly,
yeah. We're good to go when you are, Chair.
Yeah, I remember. May I remind members as to what's being asked the scrutiny committee to consider when they're coming up with the recommendations? And I got what was both at the top and the bottom of the report, which says members of the Economy and Environment Overall Scrutiny Committee are invited to, and it's 3 bullet points, review progress against the intended aims and performance objectives associated with the green space management, consider and discuss the opportunities, demands and challenges for the service. It's for the service, remember, and provide recommendations to the executive member for the environment on areas of improvement or development in our strategic approach to green space management. So there you go. Put your hands up. And who's first in? Linda Clarkson. Go on, Linda.
Thanks, Chair. First recommendation I'd like to make is about the very beginning of the report when we spoke about volunteers and friends group. I'd like to recommend, we've got lots of organisations that work with volunteers, but I would like to recommend that we look at the potential for providing more structure to incentives we may be able to offer, and advertising those incentives. At the moment, we tend to get a lot of retired people volunteering. If we want to get more unemployed younger people, if we offered some training that's sort of got something at the end that they can actually use for employment purposes, it might draw more young volunteers into these areas.
Right, next in line, David Williams.
Yeah, I think Linda's spelled it out, but I think it's actually a kind of what the council is able to offer to encourage friends groups to form, and in terms of training and opportunities and recognition.
Anybody else now? Hands up.
Hello. So
Nick, I thought, Nick, you had some very positive ones there.
So my first recommendation was based around the signage, public perception on the signage. Was that taken down, Gareth?
Yeah, more consistent across the borough. Yeah.
Right, Linda, did you put your hand back up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that to improve the comms.
Right,
I know we do comms, but we can never do enough.
David Williams.
Again, linking to this, I think it's actually to encourage community meetings to take place where there are proposed changes.
Good one.
Which, again, was actually outlined in part, but I think there were quite a few examples that were given through the meeting. Yeah.
Nathan.
It's not about this specifically, but it's just to flag up. I think Garrett, you probably took it. I think there was a recommendation around allotments and greater connectivity, I think, between different bits of the public sector, basically across Torvine. So actually we have a better understanding of what schools and what community groups are already engaged with it, but then also a question about how we connect the schools and the allotments with the food sustainability strategy as that is ongoing.
That was an extremely good point you made. I was going to make that, but you made it beautifully. Thank you.
Stuart, I can't compete. And then, as I've got the microphone, it's whether there's also something at the tail end about the disposal of dead animals, basically, and actually for us to be a bit more on for us to basically put it out in black and white to what we are willing to take, what we can't take, and then I think it might be worth working out where the grey areas are and what the expectations might reasonably be for members of the public to be dealing with some of those animals.
Again, we can give education there as well, just to add to that. Provide education
Linda,
and alternatives.
You got the next one if Nathan's finished, and then David, and then I'm going to go back to Garrett and see what he's picked up.
Chair,
okay.
One at a time.
Sorry to interrupt, but following on from what Councillor Yoles just saying about obviously the disposal of dead animals, Andrew offered that once the wording was in place, that it could be shared with members in order to gauge your views. Do you want me to add that on? Yes.
I'm conscious of the fact that Andrew set us up for quite a few things. So once I get back to you, we'll see what he set us up for, right?
So I guess the question is, though, Chair, if I may, sorry,
yes, please, David.
It's going to be more around. I'm not quite sure the right way of putting it. It's the certain classification of quote unquote potentially dangerous animals or pestilential animals, to use the 19th century expression, that we wouldn't want to be encouraging members of the public to necessarily deal with.
Well, that's all of them, though, Nathan. That's birds, that's rats, that's mice. They all carry disease. So this is where the education comes in, isn't it?
Right, look, let's not have an argument. Let Andrew deal with it. That's his job. Oh, I don't do that. I got a bit heavy then. No, I didn't. Right, Linda, you off now?
Do you want me to do the next one, Chair?
Well, yes, you are number one.
Right. It's regarding the cut and collect and the grass cutting, changing schedules. Strongly recommend that we need more evidence and monitoring, that would be essential, and recommend that we look at whether or not we can build in more flexibility with the environmental differences, the north and south.
No, you stressed that point well. I thought I did add to it. No, please do. Any more before we go from you? And let go on to David. Well, I'm going to ask Alan if he's got any. He sat there being very patient. But I'll ask David and then ask Alan and then we'll go on to Garen. All right?
I was simply going to add to Linda's point that if there are going to be changes to the regime, then communities need to be informed of this and engaged in the reasons why.
Thank you. Alan, do you got anything you want to add?
No, I'm pretty good. Cheers.
Well, you're happy with the direction of this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then, Garen, what have we got we let ourselves in for that we can make into something?
Councillor Ashley, can I ask Councillor Hall? I think Councillor Hall wants to also...
Councillor Hall, sorry, you're not on the flashing hands up bit.
It was just about the last comment we had about the directory for councillors to be able to get more information quicker about larger animals that are deceased. So some recommendation on being able to give us a bit more of an insight or a directory on who to contact, the best person to contact, because right now, when it happens, it's not easy to manage. So some form of directory on that, if that makes sense.
I'm getting an impression that Andrew offered quite a bit online about who to contact, as well as his not what to do, but the what to do, which is the more positive. I had the impression of members that we want to go down that line. As a recommendation, we need to know what the department does. The leaves and all the rest of it was part of that as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I got Linda and David again. No, I've got Linda now. What do you want to say, Linda?
Yeah, recommendation regarding the gathering of information and demographic sort of information and demand on your allotment, Stuart.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Geraint's already picked that up for us, but I just wanted to make that clear, and whether or not we can look at different models that may attract younger people, get the information from the schools.
I said earlier, there are a lot of younger people in the south who actually want to go on allotments, and what they're doing is progressively making allotments smaller, but they need to be family-friendly allotments for younger people, children seems to be one of the demographics, and also younger people that want to just take an allotment on. But there's things that need to be done to make that work.
We get a lot of inquiries up in the north as well, but they don't progress, and we need to understand the demographic and what the barriers are.
I can tell you why that is, but I'm not going to talk on here about it. David, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I'm having problems with my hand raising at the moment. It seems to flick on.
Go on, yeah.
Two things, I think, really. One was within that allotment recommendation, there was also encouraging collaboration with the food team to look at spreading messages and information. So that needs to be included within there. And then going back to our question at 10 about the educating the public around management of trees, we recommend, I think, that information is provided to sort of signpost people to other sources of information and advice, whilst recognising we can't recommend any outside bodies, but certainly I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You've done a lot here. Geraint, could we look at what people are recommending and what you've picked up that we can slot in there as well? Because I suspect this is a long report. There's a lot of stuff that can be slotted in there or grouped together and slotted in there.
Yeah, everything that I picked up through the meeting, they either sort of gave further responses that sort of reduce the need for recommendations around that, or you've covered it yourselves. The only thing I would add in, obviously, I've got to take away the action for the 4 Bronafon questions, so I'll make sure that's added to the list as well.
Can we necessarily have that as action for a seminar, because otherwise that's not going to get actioned at all?
Well, we could send the questions and then we could raise them as recommendations at the seminar, couldn't we?
Yeah,
depending on the results.
What I'll do, Chair, if it's okay with members, is I'll send them on straight away, and then as soon as I've got the responses, then I'll share them with all of the committee, and then obviously depending on the content of those responses, you may want to feed that into those seminars.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the only thing yeah, that's brilliant. The only thing I was going to add about allotments was that and some of the community practice, which I did mention and they didn't say no about, was innovative ways of community growing, which I think the salmon company from the food programme will cover. There's a lot going on there. My only worry about it is most of this is, as I've mentioned in other places, only temporary funded, and need to make sure that isn't because that's the future as far as I'm concerned. Need to make that observation. There's a lot of really good things going on around this department, like litter picking and the litter strategy and the food and all the rest of it. And it feeds into all of this, and we're kind of referencing it all over the place, and it feeds into global climate change and global climate change nature emergency as well. There's a heck of a lot in this. David? No, sorry. Is David? Yeah, you're first. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's opportunity to roll two things together here, which was the one at question 23, which was actually that we support there being area-based member engagement group meetings and welcome the reintroduction of these, but also perhaps the opportunity to include Bron Avon within this on an area basis, because we've included that at question 20. So I think we can merge those two as one recommendation, that there should be a joint approach.
I'll go with that. Linda?
Can we add to that as well of use of volunteer groups that are already active to look at the monitoring and for their input and suggestions as well when it comes to monitoring street cleanliness?
Yeah, I think we get going. Can you read back what we've got so far, if that's possible?
I can, Chair. There's an entire page full if you want me to. Or
well, give us a flavour.
Well, I've got the volunteer and friends group about obviously the incentives and publicising that more. The more consistent signage needed around and improved comms and encouraging community meetings when there are changes. There was everything around the allotments. I've mentioned that a few times throughout here. So there, all the different things you brought about the allotments. There's a couple around the disposal of dead animals. More flexibility around the grass cutting for the cut and collect. A directory around the dead animals. Encourage collaboration with the food team regarding spreading messages there. I think that was part of the allotment, sorry. More signposting in terms of the management of trees. I've got the 4 actions for Bron Avon. And then Councillor Williams is where he's just merged 2 about the member engagement, inviting Bron Avon to that. And obviously Councillor Clarkson's last one then about street cleanliness. I think that's everything I've captured.
Linda, you put your hand up again.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned the changes in the grass cutting, hedge cutting concerns around. But if you've missed anything, Gareth, I can always send it in to go in. The concern is around how well. I probably should have asked it in the thing, so I can't put it as a recommendation.
You cannot.
How many times has a crew actually said, "Oh, we couldn't cut that hedge because there was a bird's nest in it"? You know, so it is about making sure that we've got that information about training for crews, education for crews, regarding if they have got to do things within season, that they do check and they do know how to check. It's very difficult to spot some of these things.
Right. I'm going to challenge you now. Have you covered everything in this? Bearing in mind it was quite a long report, and it's about management. Have we covered everything?
I think we need to wait and see what Geraint can send us out. Once he's collated it all.
That was the next part of my question.
Yeah.
When he sends it out, read it carefully and make sure he's covered everything, because this was quite a long and rambling, and we struggled with it to start with. I think Andrew did, because he's got a big brief there and covering everything. When you look at each of those section headings, just read against. Everybody happy with this now, as it is? look like you all want to go off have your tea and a cup of tea. I don't blame you. Thank you very much for your contributions. Yeah. Been really helpful.
All right,
not an easy one to do, I don't think. Anybody want to add anything, or we're not go away now?
No. Wait and see what Geraint sends us. Go from there.
Chair,
everyone have a nice weekend.
Before everyone goes and closes the meeting, obviously the next item on the agenda is just agreeing the next meeting. So.
Right, I was about to add that. My programme shut down, but the date of the next meeting and what we're going to look at, what we're going to do.
Geraint, did you want to do a quick survey as well?
Yeah, right. Should we agree the next item first? So obviously you've got asset management strategy. Is everyone happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, and that will be the 23rd of Jan. I'll get the pro forma sorted for that and sent out as soon as I can. And it'll need to be with officers soon. So once the chair closes the meeting, if you'd like to stay online, we can do the quick survey.
All right. Okay. So that's the date of the next meeting. So we do the quick survey then. Okay. Before we shut the meeting down.